Hey, what's up? First off, this update brings official support for two big titles that many of you have been watching for. And it also packs in a handful of stability fixes and a few known issues that are worth knowing about before you jump into a session. The first headline here is game support. The package lists compatibility and day one readiness for Resident Evil Requiem and Marathon. That means the drivers include optimizations and profiles intended to make those games run properly on supported Radeon hardware, which is the sort of thing that reduces early graphical glitches and performance hiccups when a big release hits. Alongside that, AMD points to some concrete fixes aimed at real-world problems players have reported. So it's not just about new titles. There are practical improvements for people using various recording and streaming features. One of the fixed items calls out an intermittent crash or driver timeout that could happen while playing Roblox, specifically in scenarios like car zone racing and drifting, when users task switch between media on certain Radeon 7000 series cards. That's the kind of bug where somebody alt-tabs to a browser or a music player and then comes back to the game only to find the session has hard stopped. The release notes say that behavior has been addressed in this build. Another fix deals with texture flicker or corruption that could show up when using Windows desktop apps concurrently with the instant replay and record desktop features on Radeon 7000 series products. If stream or capture your desktop frequently, that particular fix is the one you'll appreciate. On the other side of the ledger, there are known issues that AMD is transparent about, and I want to make sure you hear them straight because they affect some heavy hitters. There's an intermittent crash or timeout while loading a saved game in Cyberpunk 2077 when path tracing is enabled. AMD says they're actively working with the developer to get this resolved. Similarly, players running on systems with an AMD Ryzen AI 9 HX370 can see crashes or timeouts while playing Battlefield 6, and again, that's something AMD and the game studio are collaborating on. Both those notes are important for folks who push graphics settings hard or who are on bleeding-edge laptop hardware. There are a few additional quirks worth calling out. Texture corruption or flickering has also been reported while playing Battlefield 6 with AMD's record and stream features on some graphics products, and the driver UI itself may show AMD FSR upscaling and frame generation as inactive in the software for titles like Yakuza Kiwami 3 and Dark Ties, Call of Duty Black Ops 7, and even the new Resident Evil Requiem when those features are enabled on Radeon 9000 series products. Basically, you might have the setting enabled in-game, but see it reflected as off in the AMD software. The company lists this to avoid confusion while they iron out the detection or reporting logic. I also want to mention how the community and tech sites picked up this release. A few outlets posted summaries soon after the notes went live, highlighting the same game support and the same stability fixes, so the messaging is consistent across official channels and press coverage, which helps when you're trying to cross-check whether a problem you're seeing is already acknowledged. Those write-ups tend to pull from the official release documentation and add flesh like file sizes and initial impressions, which is useful for context. From a practical standpoint, for people who stream, record, or run advanced rendering modes like path tracing, this release reads as a mixed bag. It fixes a few real headaches around desktop capture and some Roblox scenarios, but it also calls out outstanding problems with cutting-edge features in certain games and hardware combos. That's not surprising. Modern drivers have to balance so many permutations of games, OS versions, notebook firmware, and third-party overlays, but it does mean if you rely on a specific setup for production work, you'll want to be aware of the known issues list and test accordingly before pushing settings to their limits. I'll also note that the supported product list in the release documentation covers a wide range of Radeon desktop and mobile parts. So if you're on Radeon 6000, 7000, or 9000 series hardware, you'll likely find your card is covered. The release notes are explicit about which families were validated. That coverage is important because driver behavior can vary significantly between architectures. So seeing your exact model on the supported list gives more confidence that the changes were tested for your card. Overall, this update is a classic example of how driver teams juggle new game support and long-standing stability items at the same time. There's a clear push to make sure big new releases launch without obvious problems, while also addressing playback, capture, and occasional crash scenarios that affect day-to-day usage. The release notes are pretty transparent about what's fixed and what's still being chased down with developers, so it's a useful document to read through if you care about specific titles or features. That's the rundown. The key callouts are the explicit support for the two new titles, the fixes for Roblox and desktop capture glitches, and the handful of known issues around path tracing, Battlefield, and FSR Frame Generation reporting. If you're into the technical details, the official release notes are the canonical source, and they list all the specifics for supported products and the exact behavior AMD tracked in this build.